In this episode, I want to look at the hidden stories behind most campaigns, try to help those large monsters that lack intelligence, and start my own personal quest on understanding orders. Welcome to the Mythras Matters podcast, Season 1, Episode 62, Orders, Hidden Stories, and Lumbering Monsters. Hello and welcome to Mythras Matters, a podcast dedicated to the Mythras rule set and all its supplements. As always, I am your host, Inwils, and welcome to October. I want to get personal for a while and give you a brief insight into the life of a podcaster. Where does the month go? I always feel very positive when I upload the podcast episode in time for the first of the month. I then find that I am lulled into a sense of relaxation, thinking I don't need to work on the next episode until later in the month. Then all of a sudden it dawns on me that we are in the late 20s of the month and I have a podcast episode to script, record, edit and publish in just a few days. As I write this script, it has just gone 6 a.m. in the morning and I have a couple of days to get this podcast to press. I've only failed to hit a deadline once with the podcast and I'm determined not to let it happen again. I need to start work on these episodes earlier, I think. You would not believe that I actually create content on productivity. Maybe next month I will start earlier. When there are interviews to arrange, that last minute rush becomes even more intense. I think I will need to start working on several episodes ahead of time to have them all organised earlier. I hope that episodes never appear rushed or completed at the last minute. If they do, then please do not let me know. In my script, there's a laughing emoji there. I usually try to publish the podcast episode at 1 a.m. on the first day of the month, according to UK time. I then try to get up super early so that it is also available on YouTube. It sometimes does not auto-publish to YouTube, and I never want people to think that there's not an episode available. However, if there ever appears to be a delay in making the episode available, you now know that I'm either still producing the episode or I've slept through my alarms to wake me up and check that everything has been published successfully. I understand that that's a little bit off topic from Mythras itself, but I thought it would be helpful to have a bit of a behind the scenes information into the life of a podcaster. Now that the podcast is also published on YouTube, you might be wondering why there is no video content associated with the episodes. This is mainly linked to how I create the episodes. If there is an interview for the podcast, and this is done sometime before the rest of the episode is created, this is because I am unsure how long the chat will be and whether I will need to write any additional content for the episode. The next thing is that I can make several mistakes when recording my sections for the episode. It usually takes me at least twice as long to record the episode due to my mistakes. So I don't think that it would make very good video content. Plus, I am currently just out of bed and I'm writing and recording this in my pajamas. And that is something that you don't want to see on video. So with that imagery planted in your head, let's get on with today's episode. Later on, I want to discuss orders and get your opinions about large lumbering monsters that lack intelligence. But first, I want to talk about hidden stories in adventures and campaigns. As a GM, we are engaged in the whole story of the campaign. What I mean by this is that as the players take actions and interact with the story, we as GMs alter and change the outcomes. Let me give you an example to help my explanation. Imagine that the party has been asked to rescue the village leader's son from a group of nasty bandits. As they make their way through the mountain pass towards the bandits' camp, the party comes across a bandit patrol. After a brief skirmish and a fumble from the archer in the group, one of the bandits gets away. The party continues towards the camp, but as the GM, we are quickly altering an unseen part of the story. In our imaginations, we have seen the lone bandit arrive back at the camp and have warned everyone that the party is on its way. We have considered how enraged the leader has become and how he has shouted at his minions to prepare the camp. He might have reprimanded or even killed the returning bandit for letting the party defeat them or even for running away. We consider whether the bandit could have successfully navigated that discussion to come out with his life, and whether or not he now has a renewed passion to eliminate the party. We consider what the leader will do. Are they unstable enough to meet the party head on, or will they sneak off to live another day? Will he kill the leader's son, place his head on a spear and make his escape, mocking the party as he rides off into the sunset? All this happens in a few minutes as we consider what is happening. And it is these thoughts that I am saying are the hidden stories of campaigns. They are the stories that happen behind the scenes that are essentially never shared with anyone. Well, I've been thinking whether this should change and whether these stories should be voiced and shared with the party or, in our case, the viewers. We are really enjoying our Destined campaign, and I think these hidden stories are very much part of the superhero genre. In many comic books, the initial scene starts by showing what is happening elsewhere in the story. In fact, the stories often started with a scene when the identity of the evil villain is not known. The imagery just reveals their feet or the back of their head, saving that grand reveal to later in the story when the heroes meet them face to face or mask to mask. So, would sharing these stories somehow spoil the feel of the adventure, or even maybe give the players an unfair advantage? Or are there important aspects of the storyline that we should share? For me, this comes down to types of players you have and the information you provide in these additional vignettes. If your players are good role players, then they can continue the adventure without using the information that you have shared to their own advantage. I think most players will be like this. The other thing to remember is not to share too much information or important information that could influence the action or thoughts of the players. In this way, the hidden narrative should add to the overall story rather than actually influencing actions. For example, in the previous bandit example, we wouldn't share with the players the type of preparation that the leader has done to the camp. Because we play our sessions online and then share the recordings, I have also considered editing the videos to include the other side of the plot as the players progress. Although this initially seems to be a good idea, and I'm not even considering the amount of time it would take to write, record, edit, and then upload the video, I think that they might lack the impact that I would hope they would have. I'm no artist, so the additional narratives would just be me sat reading the content to the camera. If I could hire different actors or voice actors for the narration and add some animation to illustrate what is happening, then I think they would better suit the final video. I do really like the idea of sharing these hidden stories, and so I'm going to share one with you now. Please remember I am not a voice actor or a writer, so realise that the content might seem a bit flat, but it will demonstrate what I am referring to. To set the scene, in the last actual play session, the pain dealer was on the back of a nightmare horse. As Cyrus started to switch body to become the horse, typical Cyrus, the pain dealer sent a lightning bolt down at the party only to have it dismissed by Bartleby's spell. The pain dealer and the nightmare got away, and as the party continues to investigate the keep, the following happens back at Discordia's base of operations. The nightmare's hooves clattered on the flagstones, and its rider silently slipped off. With slow but even strides, he made his way to the main hall and up to Discordia. Once close, he dropped to his knees, looking at the floor rather than her imposing frame. My mistress, the portal at Snow Peak Keep has been removed, and the garrison eradicated, as you wished. She turned, her sword that she carried in her right hand, scraping across the floor, leaving a fine line and piercing the silence. And, she whispered. My mistress, the pain dealer questioned. And the encounter. He was amazed that she already knew that. I tried to destroy them, but my magic faltered, and he... Her shout stopped him. What? Apologies, my mistress, I didn't mean... Hush! I know. Her sword finished its arc and rose, pressing its point under the chin and lifting his head. I know. He is strong, my mistress. He managed to counter your spell easily. He stopped suddenly, realizing his mistake a moment too late. Be at peace. I know what happened. But I did not fail you. You failed me. I will not fail you again, Mr. Shh. I know you won't. And with a swift slice of her sword, the pain dealer's head rolled to the floor. No one fails me twice. Remove this mess. I have a realm to invade. So, I'm interested about your thoughts, not about my writing, but about the concept of hidden stories. Is this something that you just think about, or does anyone actually have a way to share these with the group? And if they do, would it be beneficial? As always, let me know in the comments on YouTube or via Discord or the usual email address. I look forward to reading and hearing about your thoughts. I love using giants and ogres in my campaigns. They are tall, strong, and generally have a lot of hit points. Armed with club-like weapon or even hold trees, their bashes and their knockbacks are great additions to combat, and the general lack of intelligence and dexterity means they are fun to play as the GM. Despite liking them for all the above reasons, these attributes are also what causes them to have what I think is a very limiting characteristic: the number of action points. In any combat, the action point economy plays a very important role. If the party is fighting against a single opponent, like say 3 party members attacking the giant, then the number of action points the giant has puts it at a serious disadvantage. With only 2 action points available, it needs to decide, does it use these to parry and evade the incoming attacks, or save them to hopefully survive long enough to swing that tree trunk and take off some heads? Even with a one-on-one fight, only having 2 action points puts the giant at a disadvantage against a character with 3, since that character will always be able to have the additional attack in the final turn. While feeling sorry for my large, unintelligent, lumbering monsters, I looked back at the characteristics that I used to calculate action points to see if there was a solution there. Side note, I must say that playing on Roll20 with Digital Pagan's excellent character sheet has made me rather lazy when working out the number of action points, etc. This is because the character sheet calculates all these for us. So I am sad to admit that I had to go back to the core rulebook to see how to work out action points. I'm just hanging my head in shame. To calculate action points, you will all know that you add together your intelligence and dexterity and consult the table. The reasons the rules provide for the use of these 2 characteristics are clear: intelligence to exploit the openings, and dexterity meaning you can act more because you are more agile. But it seems that this calculation immediately puts my strong, lumbering and stupid monsters at a disadvantage, and that sort of makes me sad. I want them to be formidable foes and not just large cannon fodder who are slashed to pieces by the more intelligent and dexterous fighter who is prancing around like an elf or some kind of forest sprite. Oh, no offence to either elves or sprites at this point. Not wanting to only talk about issues or problems, I had to think of a possible solution to this, and I came up with 2 ideas, both which my giants liked. First was to include the strength characteristic in some way. To justify this, I would say that the stronger characters are able to maintain their attacks and parries for a longer period of time, so they get to hit more. Now I can hear you all typing rapidly to disprove that one, so I came up with a second way. Could the number of action points also be related to combat styles? As the monster's combat style increased, they gained additional action points. This would reflect their proficiency in their weapon, and since combat styles are based on strength and dexterity, would also include the strength characteristic I previously mentioned. Maybe it could be for any combat style that goes over 100 or 80% would gain an extra action point. Would this allow my giants to have an extra action point and to be a little bit more successful in combat? At this point, you might be thinking you are not on the side of my giants at all, and they deserve to have less action points. Or I could just ignore the characteristics and give them 3 action points just to make me happy. I'm the GM, so who would argue? But I am interested in what you all think about this. Should the number of action points be less reliant on characteristics and be more related to combat style? Or are you happy with the current system? If you have any views on this, then please let me know in the comments. Let me know if I'm completely off track with this or whether or not you think I might have something. Start your comments with either for or against the giants, so I know where you stand on this crusade. Remember, if you would like to contribute to the podcast, then why not drop me an email or message and let me know what you would like to have a chat about. We are always looking for reviews or interviews or chats with people. So if you are interested, you can email me at inwils@gmail.com or send me a message on the various forums or the Discord. I really enjoyed the series of episodes that were based on magic, and I wanted to do a similar focus on another aspect of Mythras. As you have probably noticed from the previous section on giants, I am not the best at combat, so I have put that one to one side. But something that I feel is an essential part of any Mythras campaign are cults, orders, and brotherhoods. Now, just for ease, I'm going to refer to them all of these, whether or not they're cults or orders or brotherhoods. I'm going to refer to them as orders for the rest of this podcast. These orders not only add a significant depth to a campaign, they are also essential for the progression of characters, with spellcasters only gaining access to certain spells as they gain promotion through the order. Because of this, I think it is important for the GM to establish orders in their campaigns early on. So I thought I would provide some possible starting points for these and how I have gone about creating the orders in my own campaign. So first up, I want to talk about orders and character concepts. The character creation process should always start from a concept. This includes the general feel of the character the player is creating, and this can provide a valuable insight into possible orders they could join or already be a part of. I'm going to leave the spellcasters at this point and talk about their orders later on. So I'm focusing on those characters that might have a strength in combat, or alternative skills such as influence, survival, or mechanisms. As the player develops their character's skills, it becomes apparent what type of character it will be. The player will then expand on this when they are creating their character's background or introducing their character to other players or to you as the GM. At this point, possible orders can start to be created. For example, if the character is going down the thievery route, then thieves guilds can be created, while the noble fighter might lead to an order of paladin type knights or even just defenders of the poor and weak. Remember, an order does not have to be a large group of people. It can be a small group of people localized in a particular area. A bandit camp is essentially an order where the character progresses through the ranks and at certain levels they gain special rewards. With these smaller orders, it could be that the character starts here, and then as they outgrow their order, or the order has nothing more to teach them, they progress onto a new order. In this way, the GM does not have to create orders that are the same throughout the whole of the campaign world. They can create localized ones, and as the characters develop and progress and start to journey away from the starting area, new orders can be introduced. This is also beneficial since the character might have changed from their original starting point. That bandit might have seen the error of their ways and has started to strive to become more noble, or that rogue character has decided to move away from small-time thievery into assassinations for a price. So if you are starting a campaign, don't worry about the size of the order. Focus more on its purpose and how this relates to the character or characters that will be its members. The second way to think about the orders in your campaigns is to see them as a restriction on the characters. At this point, I don't want you to think I mean restrictions as a negative, but more as a positive. Magic is a very powerful force in your campaign world, and we don't want every newly created theist blasting out lightning bolts or shaking the earth up with earthquake for their first adventure. In the same way, sorcerers and mystics also will have limited access to spells and powers. This limitation or restriction is what I'm referring to, and is something that the orders provide. With these orders, I think it is important to consider these when first creating your campaign world, rather than when players are creating their characters. How will the sorcerers be organized in your world? How does the religious leaders provide access to the power of the deities? How do the mystics train their followers? How powerful are the initial spirits animists can summon and bind? For me, these are all aspects of the campaign world that need to be considered and implemented before the characters encounter these powerful spell users. The theists are probably the easiest orders to create because of the deities that they are associated with, so I always start with these. I worked on the orders associated with the sorcerers next because I wanted them to be seen as a political force in the world, similar to the robed magic users of the Dragonlance worlds. At this point, I have to admit that I did take and will continue to take a very easy method for creating orders. Starting on page 210 and continuing to page 213 of the core rulebook are a range of example orders. Every order I have created, I have used these as possible starting points. So I would suggest that you start with these, have a look at them and then adapt them. In addition to this, don't feel you need to add all the detail to all your orders at the start of your campaign. What I would recommend is to only provide the specific details for the orders that are being used. For example, there are several orders of theists in my campaign world, but the only one that is developed is the Order of Amriel, the goddess that Bartleby worships. In a similar way, I have only increased the detail of the blue and red order of sorcerers, since these are the only two that players have chosen to belong to. And as players have gained ranks in the orders, I have discussed ideas with the players, so we have co-created the upper levels of the orders, allowing players to have ownership over their own order. No matter how or when you create your orders, always try to ensure that they have an important role in the campaign world and that they will add depth to the character. If you do not, then they will become disconnected from both the world and the characters. In future episodes, I want to show you how orders can contribute to your storylines in your campaigns. But in the next discussion, I want to talk about joining the orders. If you have created your own orders, then why not share them with us in the comments? But if you just want to have a look at mine, then follow the link in the show notes to the campaign areas on World Anvil. And that's it, another episode of Mythras Matters completed. Don't forget you can check out all my content by following my YouTube channel and the campaign areas on World Anvil. I now also produce an encounter and adventure for Mythras every month that are available as digital downloads on my Ko-fi site, link in the show notes. I really appreciate your support, and don't forget to go in and have a chat with people on the Discord and the Tappers Talk forums. There are great people there sharing their ideas within discussions. So until next time, have a great month of gaming, and I'll chat to you all in November. Until then, I hope all your opposed rolls succeed and provide you with a well-deserved special. Thanks for listening, everyone. See ya. Bye. The content of this podcast is covered by the Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license, so please give appropriate credit if you are sharing or copying any part of this podcast. Thank you.